When a pandemic hits, what threats do people living with disabilities face? Studies show this community is at a higher risk of catching coronavirus.
President Muhammadu Buhari calls for peace and support for Chad as the military concludes a monumental government transition. Hello, thanks for tuning in to the show that goes around the continent to bring you stories near and far. I'm Joke Rogers at Channels Television here in Lagos. I'm joined by Vincent McCory from the Voice of America in Washington.
Well, thanks, I'm Vincent McCory at the Voice of America. Happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Our broadcast still looks a little different because of the global pandemic, but we truly appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. Let's start off with the latest from Nigeria. Channels Television in Lagos brings you that story.
Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has asked the international community to support Chad to conclude the proposed 18-month transition from military to democratic government in a peaceful manner. The president made the call at the opening of the extraordinary summit of heads of state and government of the Lake Chad Basin Commission.
President Muhammadu Buhari and other heads of state and government of the Lake Chad Basin Commission, including the Central African Republic, Chad, Niger, Cameroon, and the chairman of the Presidential Council of Libya, converged in Abuja for an extraordinary summit for the first time in Nigeria.
It is my honor.
The opening of the summit, chaired by Nigeria's president, pivoted on the raging insecurity crisis in the African region, particularly the urgent need to support the transition framework in Chad to halt further spread of conflicts.
It must be stated that the sanctity of the Chadian constitution is the supreme guiding document defining the social contract in the country must be respected.
Speaking through the lens of the situation in Chad, the chair of leaders of the LCBC member countries identified the wider implication for other countries.
Unrestrained flow of arms, drugs, and other harmful substances would further compound the security and stability of our areas and neighboring countries.
For the first time, the Lake Chad Basin Commission is holding an enlarged extraordinary summit to include observers from Sudan, African Union Commission, as well as the Economic Community of West African States. The summit, which broke to continue behind closed doors, reconvened after over 2 hours with a resolution which mandates the Nigerian president to appoint a special envoy to Chad. To further crystallize efforts towards achieving peace and stability, including security in the African region, which is central at this summit, the president has called on the international partners, including the United Kingdom and the EU, to help support Chad's transition within the allotted 18 months period.
Let's get more on this story from the Director General of the Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, Professor Bola Akinteriwa. Thanks for joining us on Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
So what do you make of the summit's resolution mandating President Muhammadu Buhari to appoint a special envoy to Chad?
I think the appointment is very timely and necessary. First, because President Muhammadu Buhari is the chairman of the Lake Chad Basin Commission, in that capacity, he has to ensure that he takes initiative and provide leadership by sending an envoy to go on a fact-finding mission. Secondly, it is consistent with the principle of subsidiarity of the African Union, which requires that every region of Africa, every sub-region of Africa must first of all take the initiative to ensure that peace is restored in their sub-region or region before bringing whatever challenges that may exist to Addis Ababa for the African Union leaders to deal with. And I think it is also consistent with the reality on ground, because the space of terrorism is unnecessarily widening, and the threat to sub-regional security is such that there is the need for Buhari to quickly send someone there to respond to the intending and deepening terrorism in the region.
And for the first time, the Lake Chad Basin Commission held an enlarged extraordinary summit to include observers from Sudan, the African Union Commission, as well as ECOWAS. What's the significance of this?
I think there are basically two realities to reckon with. The leaders are beginning to see that there is the need for a more constructive approach, greater collective approach, rather than limiting this to few countries. There is the need to recognize the fact that terrorism is now the major challenge of all countries. Therefore, learning lessons from the experiences of others will be very good. So, and I think it's a recognition of expanding space of sub-regional threats. And we need a collective, a more collective containment strategy.
Right, thank you for sharing your thoughts on the Chad issue. Director General of the Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, Professor Bola Akinteriwa. Thanks again for joining us today on Africa 54.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Before the pandemic hit, 82% of clinics in the landlocked southern African nation of Eswatini lacked hot running water. That has recently changed with the installation of solar-powered water heaters in every single government clinic, opening up clean health facilities to up to 10,000 people a day in a nation that has long struggled with building up infrastructure. VOA's Anita Powell reports from Lobamba, Eswatini.
Clean, hot water, the most basic healthcare tool, until now unavailable at most government clinics in impoverished Eswatini, formerly known as Swaziland. Doctors say hand washing, hygiene, and sanitation are key to curbing the spread of illness. Coronavirus has claimed nearly 700 lives in this nation of just over 1 million people. In recent months, a multinational initiative has supplied every public clinic in the country with this precious tool by installing an outdoor solar-powered hand-washing station. VOA asked Eswatini's acting prime minister what seems like an obvious question. Why didn't the government do this before? Why wait for foreign donors? Well, he replied, it's not that easy for a cash-strapped government with limited manufacturing capability and an unreliable electricity supply. When the pandemic hit, he said, Eswatini struggled to acquire basic things like face masks.
One of the priorities was to build the clinics first, because you can't put the stuff here without clinics. As we were building the clinics, as we have 92 of them now, those public health facilities, the stakeholders came in, they wanted to assist, and we gladly accepted that.
This clinic near the capital sees 600 patients a week. Nurse manager Lindiwe Magongo says they also use the hot water station to clean the clinic and brew tea for staff. It also breaks what she described as a stigma around hand washing.
Whenever we wash hands, it means we are going to eat. Going and washing hands all the time, it's an African. We grow up knowing that it's an African to keep on washing hands. Why? There's always that why. Why do you keep on washing your hands?
So how do you break the taboo? How do you break that?
This is going to break it. And COVID-19 has also helped us in breaking that.
A year ago, Australian solar energy entrepreneur Robert Fraser landed in Eswatini for 2 weeks of meetings. Then the pandemic struck, and as he sat in lockdown halfway across the world from home, he thought, why not do something?
There was a very obvious need, and we had the products, we had the relationships, the expertise to actually deliver a project that would really make a difference in a very short amount of time, and actually, to be frank, for a reasonably small amount of money.
Fraser stresses that he's not running a charity. They're a for-profit company, and this project has paved the way for a $100 million solar storage project in Eswatini. Health Minister Lizzie Nkosi says hand hygiene is a key weapon against the virus and one that Eswatini needs while it launches its mass vaccination campaign in coming weeks.
It's not only bringing hot water in places where we would never have dreamt would have hot water, but is reinforcing age-old infection prevention measures that the ministry employs every time, whether we have an outbreak of measles, of diarrhea, an outbreak.
Don't take clean, hot water for granted, she said. In these challenging times, the Eswatini don't. Anita Powell, VOA News, Lobamba, Eswatini.
The Zulu and Xhosa tribes, historically referred to as nations, are the most dominant in South Africa. But it's the Ndebele nation that has recently been at the forefront, fighting for the recognition and preservation of its culture. To mark Africa Day, Channels TV traveled to Ndebele in the Mpumalanga province of South Africa to find out how this nation is managing to preserve its culture of bright colors for centuries.
The Ndebele people of South Africa are known as people of color, literally. What others call color blocking, referring to wearing of clothes with different colors at the same time, is what those from the Ndebele culture have done for centuries and are very proud of it. The Ndebele tribe, estimated to be numbering just over 1 million people, speak isiNdebele and dominate the Mpumalanga province on the eastern side of South Africa. 64-year-old Gogo Sophie Mahlangu is a musician and one of the oldest cultural custodians of the Ndebele people. She spends much of her time painting and beading at her workshop. Madam Mahlangu also teaches young girls in the community how to preserve their culture. Through the use of beads and paint, she colors everything she touches with her hands, from linen, furniture, clothing and ornaments, with a variety of colors to give all the material around her an Ndebele feel. 35-year-old Tando Mahlangu, not a relative, is an Ndebele culture activist. He has launched a national campaign to ensure the Ndebele culture is represented on national platforms, including television channels. He made headlines recently when he was humiliated at the Johannesburg shopping mall by the mall manager who felt that the Ndebele attire he was wearing was exposing too much of his body. However, Mahlangu says, as Africans commemorate Africa Day the world over, we must embrace and own who we are as Africans.
What I can say is Africa, we need to celebrate being an African. You need to celebrate being a black person. You need to celebrate being yourself, you know.
His partner, Ndebele Mazuku, is also in this fight.
We must not leave our culture because it's where we belong. If you are a youth out there, you don't take your culture seriously, it might be a problem because sometimes if you don't know your culture, you don't know where you're from.
According to historians, after their defeat by white settlers in 1883, the Ndebele people decided to use painting and beaded clothing as a way of silent resistance and preservation of their culture. The Ndebele culture expert and researcher Tulani Gaja says the fight to preserve the Ndebele culture is a genuine one.
It's a community from the creator himself, and they have the special message to deliver in this current time.
And the colors of the Ndebele people are being projected full spectrum globally by the people. A notable torchbearer is 85-year-old Madam Esther Mahlangu, a mural artist who has painted her people's colors boldly across the world. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Betty Dibia for Foreign Dispatches.
It's time for a break. As we go, we remind you to visit our website, channelstv.com, for news and programming around the clock. You can also find us on youtube.com/channelsweb. Still to come, see how these Moroccan surfers plan to bring life and good fortune back to this remote fishing port through community water sport and youth education.
Welcome back to Africa54. Vincent McCory in Washington. Around the world, more than 1 billion people live with some form of disability, and they are disproportionately at risk from the COVID-19 pandemic. VOA's Veronica Balderas reports.
You're okay, baby.
Ellie Carney's loving bond with her Labrador Retriever Olive has made the pandemic more bearable. Ellie is 27 and has a disability.
Ever since COVID, Olive has been spending time with me. I'm not depressed anymore.
With professional help, Ellie has been living a mostly independent life for 3 years now. She's adjusted to the new normal, but her immune system is suppressed. So she's had to give up activities that might risk infection, says her mother.
When you have a disability, you really have to continue doing your independent living skills on a daily basis. And when COVID happened, Ellie did regress.
I miss my friends, I miss being active, and I miss bowling.
In this pandemic, people like Ellie face special risks. Their pre-existing health conditions make them vulnerable. They rely on others, and they are often forgotten.
And we all have needs. They're all things in life that are necessary for us, right? Food, shelter, clothing, in order to live a good quality of life. But people with disabilities have an extra set of needs. Each type of disability faces different types of barriers and supports.
At the Mary Marshall Assisted Living Residence, 70-year-old Muriel Chrysler gets government-funded care 24/7. Restrictions are gradually being loosened after a year of measures to prevent COVID outbreaks.
They've opened up the dining room once a week. They have opened up the community room. And people go in there and talk and, do activities again.
While keeping the residents mostly isolated helped control infections, it took a psychological toll, says residence head Davina Alston.
70% of our residents are diagnosed with schizophrenia. Even though you can take medications, we saw an increase in residents having hallucinations and being depressed.
Advocates are documenting the problems both in the U.S. and around the world.
Persons with disabilities should be prioritized in accessing vaccination. So this unfortunately has not happened in most places of the world. Dependence on family members can cause and aggravate experiencing violence.
In the United States, some 61 million adults live with a disability. Many are in group living settings, and that has penalized them. The Biden administration has created a COVID-19 health equity task force to examine disparities in care.
The fact that we have physicians and nurses and psychologists and social workers who go through their credentialing process and don't really learn much about disability culture, disability etiquette, civil rights laws, accessibility is a problem because it affects the quality of the health care that people receive.
There's also a presidential proposal to spend $400 billion for more home or community-based care for people with disabilities. If Congress passes it, the support workers who help Ellie and her mom will get a raise.
The DSPs get paid anywhere from $13 to $14 an hour. We really have to increase that number so that they can work 40-hour weeks and live off their salaries.
Money is important, but Mrs. Chrysler believes more can be done to change the way people with disabilities are perceived and how they can succeed with just a little bit of help.
I'm as normal as any other person walking on the street. I have a mental illness. I take medication for it. It's treated. If I had two legs, I'd be living on the out there in the world.
Veronica Valderas Iglesias for VOA News, Washington.
Young Moroccan surfers are trying to revive the fortunes of a remote fishing port by promoting it as a destination for their sport and pushing small economic projects. Their group is also teaching local children to brave the crashing waves. Take a look.
In a small fishing town in Morocco's south, wedged between the Atlantic Ocean and the Sahara, a group of young surfers are teaching local children to brave the crashing waves. A day's drive from the cities of northern Morocco and on the fringe of the world's greatest desert, the group has set up a beachfront cafe where young people can gather, learn and have fun in the sleepy port of Tarfaya.
The goal behind the club is to teach languages and teach surfing. Our students both rely on this place to grow, as well as take the club's philosophy further.
Tafaya, with its small harbour, offers few work opportunities for its 9,000 inhabitants. At their New Waves coffee shop, the surfers meet and play music. They borrowed money from the bank to buy the surfboards and wetsuits for their club and to equip the cafe. Perched between desert and ocean, Tafaya is little more than a way station on the narrow ribbon of asphalt running hundreds of miles down the northwest African coast. Thousands of migrants have drowned at sea, and the surfers had to win over parents fearful of the ocean's swells. Families also did not let girls join the club until they saw the young sister of one of the surfers taking part alongside the boys and realized it was safe. More than 100 local children, boys and girls, have attended the free surfing classes they offer at their wooden shack, watching as instructors demonstrate moves before charging into the sea to try it out for themselves. The surfers also teach the children English and Spanish, hoping to open their horizons beyond scant local job offerings or the lure of joining migrants heading to Europe via illegal and perilous boat journeys to the Canary Islands 100 kilometers away.
As teenage pregnancies soared during coronavirus lockdowns in Kenya's largest slum, Kibera, teachers and parents looked for a way to reduce the problem. They formed a ladies' football club. The girls became so good at the game, they are now poised to join Kenya's professional women's soccer league. Brenda Malinya reports from Nairobi.
In the heart of Africa's largest urban slum, Kibera, two amateur Kenyan football soccer teams, the Undugu Queens and the Queens Starlets, are playing a friendly game. The ladies' teams were formed as Kenyan authorities say teenage pregnancies jumped at least 40% during COVID lockdown measures. Founder and coach of the Undugu Queens Club, Laban Ouma, says their goal was to direct the ladies' energy in a healthy way.
The impact that this program gives to the girl is that it is protecting them from the ills within the social structure where we are living. We are living in an environment full of drug and substance abuse. We have early pregnancies too.
Winfred Nyaboke joined the Undugu Queens in late 2020 after her best friend Ruth got pregnant while schools were closed during the pandemic.
She was my good friend. She refused to join us in playing soccer. She decided to play with boys. Right now she is pregnant. I decided to keep myself busy with soccer. I knew it would keep me from falling into the same trap.
The football club also offers a mentorship program for schoolwork as well as access to menstrual health care products. But some players still become pregnant.
I stopped playing soccer after getting pregnant. I couldn't continue during my pregnancy. Now that the baby is a little bit older, I can play again.
The team's hard work appears to be paying off. The Undugu Queens are set to join the Nairobi County Women's Football League after the coronavirus suspension on sports events is lifted. Brenda Malinya for VOA News, Nairobi.
And that's our show for today. You can find all the continent's top news and world news online at voaafrica.com. Check it out. Vincent McCory in Washington, Channels Television has your last word from Lagos.
We look forward to bringing you another show next week. Remember, channelstv.com is your source for news and other programming. I'm Joker Rogers. Thanks for watching and goodbye.